Intuition has always been hard to describe. It is knowledge without the steps, certainty without the case. A conclusion that arrives without bringing its reasons along with it, and that often refuses, even later, to hand them over. Every culture has tried to name it, and every naming has been a little off. The Greeks called it nous and distinguished it from dianoia, the step-by-step reasoning that walks up a staircase of propositions. Nous did not climb, it saw. The medievals preserved the distinction as intellectus and ratio, the direct apprehension of a whole, versus the discursive labour of working out its parts. The Romantics gave it back under the word imagination, not in the sense of fancy, but in the high, serious sense Coleridge wrote about, the faculty that grasps forms. Jung placed it alongside sensation, thinking, and feeling as one of the four functions of consciousness, and insisted, against a rationalism that had already begun to disown it, that it was a legitimate mode of knowing. In ordinary speech, outside any of these traditions, it is simply called the gut, the hunch, the feeling, the sense of it.
Sukajan, Sirakajan, Betama, Nedelila Kakasi, Nedelila Kata, Nkambeyan, Alabadon, Danayateban, Jigiteban, Tilebenabo, Yelembena.
What all these words are pointing at is the same quiet experience. You know something, and you do not know how you know. The knowing is there before the reasons. Sometimes the reasons come later, trailing politely, catching up. Sometimes they never come at all. The knowing arrives whole, or nearly whole, and by the time your narrating mind has caught up enough to say what it was, the rest of you has already moved. This is not a small or occasional faculty, it is happening constantly under the surface of ordinary life. You know often that a decision is wrong before you can list a single reason against it. The list, if you ever assemble it, is built afterward in defense of a conclusion you had already reached. There is a temptation when you start to take this seriously to inflate it, to speak of it in the language of the occult, to imagine that the gut is an organ of reception tuned to some frequency outside you, that hunches are messages from somewhere beyond the self. This temptation is understandable. Intuition feels given rather than made. It arrives with a finality that ordinary reasoning rarely has. When the right answer drops into the mind fully formed, the experience is closer to revelation than to calculation, and the oldest vocabularies for things that feel given are religious. So people reach for those vocabularies, and they speak of spirit, of a higher self, of the metaphysical.
A clear intuitive and clear intuition comes from a very different level, Let me compare this, that the kind of street psychic I'm talking about would be like eating junk fried food all of your life versus organically grown, healthy, consciously prepared, beautiful meals. Got it? And in order to get to that clear level of intuition, you don't get there through oming and ahhing and shoving incense up your nose. You get there by becoming by filling in your self-esteem, by beginning to realize that here's what is true. You won't become clearly intuitive if you don't have the capacity or the courage to follow your small intuitive hits. If you can't follow that, you sure aren't going to get a big one.
How do you know when it's truly intuition and not wishful thinking or not, imagination?
Yeah. Well, you know what? Because intuition makes you feel uncomfortable. Fantasy doesn't.
Oh, wow. Now you got to say that again. Intuition makes you feel uncomfortable.
Fantasy doesn't.
Something is being pointed at, but the pointing tends to land in the wrong place. Because the closer you look at what intuition actually is, the stranger and more ordinary it becomes at once. It is not less mysterious than the mystical traditions claim. It is mysterious in a different direction. It is not that a message is being transmitted from outside the mind. It is that the mind is larger and older and quieter than the part of it that narrates, and most of what you know is known by the larger, older, quieter part and reported to the narrator only when the narrator has sense enough to listen. That is already enough to be strange. You do not need to add anything to it. The ordinary truth is weirder than the romantic version. You are, underneath your own sentences, a deep and patient thing, and most of your best thinking is not done by the voice you identify with. The mind underneath. The voice that narrates your inner life, the one you hear when you think in sentences, the self that deliberates, that rehearses, that judges, is a small and late structure sitting on top of something much larger. The larger thing is doing most of the work. The narrator takes credit because the narrator is the one who writes the reports. What you call yourself most of the time is this narrator. I think, I feel, I decided. The sentences come and you recognize yourself in them and you say, fairly, that this is you. It is, but it is not all of you. It is the part of you that uses language, and language is a late arrival on a very old evolutionary scene. Underneath language is everything that language built on. Image, sensation, emotion, pattern, memory, the long library of learned responses that your body and brain have accumulated since before you had the word I. Most of your knowing lives down there. The narrator visits, the narrator samples, the narrator does not even come close to exhausting what is present. Intuition, when you understand it this way, is not a separate faculty. It is a message from the part of you that does not speak in sentences. It is the larger mind reporting up. And what it is reporting, almost always, is the result of a calculation that has already happened somewhere beneath language, using materials the narrating self either never encoded verbally or encoded so long ago that the verbal tags have fallen away. Think about what this means practically. A lifetime of being around faces has taught you to read micro-expressions you could not begin to describe. A decade in any profession has trained you to recognize patterns you cannot articulate. An afternoon of walking through a forest has filled you with information about weather, terrain, and presence that no report could summarize. All of this sediments, it settles into you. And when a situation arises that matches one of these buried patterns, the match registers, somatically, emotionally, as a pull or a flinch, before the reasoning mind has any idea why. The registration is the hunch. It is not magic. It is memory operating below the threshold of statements. It is the accumulated weight of every experience you have ever had, pressing on the present moment, recognizing something, and sending up a quiet signal. This one, be careful, come closer, go. Which means, and this is worth getting quiet enough to hear, intuition is not the opposite of reason. It is not a rival faculty competing with the analytical mind for territory. It is reason operating in a different register. It is reasoning that has been practiced so many times and folded so deeply that it has sunk beneath the threshold of articulation. A chess master does not intuit a good move instead of analyzing the position. The master has analyzed so many positions over so many years that the analysis has compressed itself into pattern recognition. The move is seen because the structure is familiar. The familiarity is the analysis, folded up and put away. A novice looking at the same board cannot intuit the move because the novice has nothing stored. They have to think, and the thinking feels like work because the work has not yet been done enough times to stop feeling like work. This dissolves the old false choice that so much of modern life has been built around. Feelings versus facts, gut versus head, heart versus mind. These pairings sound wise and they sound ancient, but they are a misreading of a single process. Conscious reasoning is intuition in its slow, explicit form, intuition that has not yet been practiced enough to become automatic. Intuition is reasoning in its fast, compressed form, reasoning that has been practiced so much it no longer needs to show its steps. The same mind does both. The question was never which to trust in general. The question always is whether in the particular situation in front of you the deeper mind has been fed enough material to be worth listening to. If it has, it is often the more accurate guide. If it has not, it will lie to you with exactly the same confidence.
La tarde cambió su viento sin tener que preguntar. Tu voz se quedó en mi pecho como algo que quiere hablar. Yo no sabía que el día me iba a empezar a mirar. Sin aviso, como el agua al caminar, y el mundo se hizo más lento para dejarte entrar. Te vi llegar en la arena, te vi llegar.
The body remembers. The deeper mind speaks almost always through the body. This is one of the quietest and most consistent findings about how intuition actually arrives, and it cuts directly against the philosophical habit, at least in the West, of locating thought exclusively in the head. The gut feeling is not a metaphor, it is felt in the gut. The chest tightening when something is wrong is not a figure of speech. The chest tightens. The hesitation in the legs, the weight in the shoulders, the prickling at the back of the neck, the subtle withdrawal of breath. These are not ways of describing intuition. They are intuition in its native vocabulary. The body, it turns out, is not just a messenger for the mind, it is part of the mind. The two are not separable in any real sense. The brain is a body organ. The body is shot through with the nervous system, and there are pathways, the vagus nerve, the enteric nervous system, sometimes called the second brain, the interoceptive pathways that carry information from the viscera up into the insular cortex, along which the body is constantly sending information about its state, and that information is constantly being integrated into what you experience as thought. The neurologist Antonio Damasio spent decades studying patients who, because of damage to a specific part of the prefrontal cortex, had lost the ability to produce emotional responses. Their intelligence was intact, their logic was intact. They could reason about consequences, list options, weigh arguments. What they could not do was decide. They would sit at a table for half an hour trying to pick a restaurant, endlessly enumerating pros and cons, never arriving at a choice. What they had lost was not their reasoning, but the somatic signal that normally tags possibilities with valence. This one feels right, that one feels wrong, and gives the reasoning something to close on. Without the body's vote, the mind could not conclude. Reasoning, it turned out, does not run on logic alone. It runs on logic plus feeling, and feeling is what the body does. This finding, if you sit with it, has something almost tender in it. It means that the ancient language of the heart, the gut, the bones, the blood, the language that every tradition has used to describe deep knowing, and that the modern world has been slightly embarrassed by, was never purely poetic. It was accurate phenomenology. People have always known, without needing a laboratory, that their deepest convictions registered somewhere below the neck. That fear and love and certainty arrived as sensations before they arrived as thoughts, that the body knew first. The laboratories have, in their own way, confirmed it, which has a strange practical consequence. The cultivation of intuition is not, as the romantic view sometimes suggests, a matter of attuning yourself to subtle energies or opening hidden channels. In practice, it is a matter of learning to notice, finely enough, what is already happening in the body. It is the cultivation of interoception. It is the slow relearning of a signal that most adults have been, unknowingly, drowning out for years. Because here is what happens to most people. The body speaks, tightens, flinches, warms, withdraws, and the narrator, trained into habits of self-override, speaks over it. Don't be ridiculous. You're imagining things. You're just tired. Stop being so sensitive. There's no reason to feel this way. The narrator has reasons. The body does not argue. The body does not need to argue. It is not that kind of thing. It simply goes quiet. If it is overridden enough times, it becomes, for most ordinary purposes, silent. The signal is still there, but the person has stopped receiving it. And so the first and often the hardest work for anyone who wants to live in better relationship with their own intuition is simply the work of learning to listen to the body again. Not as a spiritual exercise, though it can be that. as an ordinary, practical, and very unromantic act of paying attention, of noticing what one actually feels as distinct from what one thinks one is supposed to feel, of letting the signal arrive before the override arrives, of giving the body time to speak before the narrator starts talking over it. The signal will be wrong sometimes, so will the thinking. Neither is infallible, and we will come to how to hold them both. But if the body is never allowed to speak, a whole register of knowing is lost. The person is left reasoning from a subset of the data they actually have. They wonder why their life feels thin. They wonder why their decisions feel forced. They wonder why they cannot seem to want what they say they want, or why they keep finding themselves again and again in the same wrong rooms. Often what is missing is simply a channel they have learned over years to close. To open it again is not a dramatic act, it is quiet. It is paying attention to whether your chest is tight when you walk into a particular building, whether your shoulders drop or rise when a particular name appears on your phone, whether your sleep changes in the weeks when a particular decision is pending, whether your body moves toward a thing or away from it when the narrator is not looking. These are small signals. Over time, they become a language. And once the language comes back, it does not leave again easily. The body, it turns out, is patient. It will wait as long as it takes. It has been waiting the whole time. There is something else strange about intuition, and it has to do with the way it arrives in time, or rather, the way it does not. Conscious reasoning runs on a clock. It proceeds step by step. It begins somewhere and ends somewhere, and the ending comes after the beginning, always, the way walking comes after standing up. This is how language works. This is how sentences work. One word follows another, meaning accrues in sequence. The mind that reasons in sentences is therefore a mind that reasons in time, because that is what sentences do. They unfold. Intuition does not unfold. Intuition arrives whole, or nearly whole. It does not wait for its reasons to finish before delivering its conclusion. The conclusion and the reasons, if the reasons ever come, arrive either together or in reverse order. The conclusion first, the justification trailing behind. You feel that a friendship is ending weeks before you can say why. You know a paragraph is wrong before you can name the flaw. You turn down a street and sense, almost before stepping onto it, that something about it is off, and only later identify the three small things, a parked car, a closed shutter, a silence, that added up to the feeling. In each case, the knowing precedes the narrating. The narrating, when it catches up, does not produce the knowing, it explains it. This has a peculiar implication, and it is worth sitting with because it changes something about how you understand yourself. It means that some portion of what you know is known outside of the sequential order that conscious thought requires. It means that you are not a single linear process. You are something more like several processes running in parallel at different speeds with different access to different kinds of data. The slow, linguistic, narrating process is the one you tend to identify with because it is the one that talks. But it is not the only one at work, and it is often not the first to finish. By the time the narrator has composed its sentence, another part of you has usually already made up its mind and is waiting patiently for language to catch up. This is what gives intuition its uncanny quality. It is not that you have seen the future. It is that part of you has finished thinking before the part that narrates has started. The result is a temporal lag. The conclusion arrives from a direction the self does not know how to look in, and this lag is experienced, wrongly but understandably, as the feeling of something having been given from outside. Nothing has been given from outside. Something has been given from within, from a layer the narrator has no direct access to. And that is strange enough without needing to add anything to it. The ordinary mind, at its depths, is already more of a committee than a person, and its committee members do not always wait their turn. There is a gentleness in realizing this. It means, for one thing, that you are not required to understand yourself at every moment. The narrator does not have to have caught up with the rest of you in order for the rest of you to be right. You can feel something without knowing why you feel it and still be feeling something real. You can be pulled towards something or away from something without being able to defend the pull, and the pull can still be trustworthy. The narrator has to earn its trust in a certain way, by argument, by reasons, by being able to walk through its case step by step. The depth does not have to earn trust that way. The depth speaks its own language, and demanding that it translate into the narrator's dialect before you will listen is a way of refusing most of what you know. There are whole seasons of a life that are spent waiting for the narrator to catch up to something the rest of you has already decided, a relationship that has to end and that some deeper layer has already ended, and that the narrator will spend months or years constructing the reasons for. A job that is wrong, and that everything below the neck already knows is wrong, and that the narrator will keep talking about in terms of pros and cons, because it is not ready yet to admit what has already been decided, a love that has been there for a long time before the person can say the word for it. A friendship that has quietly become family before anyone has announced the change. The narrator is often the last to know, not because it is slow, but because its job is to build the case, and the case takes time to build. Without the narrator, there would be no way to communicate the deeper knowing, no way to check it, no way to question it, no way to act on it with any precision. The narrator is, in a sense, the interface. It is how the depth becomes decision. But it is not the source of the decision. The source is older and quieter, and much of the work of living well is learning to let the narrator serve the depth, rather than insisting that the depth justify itself to the narrator every time. Intuition is a read on a pattern. If the pattern is real and you have seen it before, the read will usually be right. If the pattern is not real or you have never seen it before, the read will usually be wrong. The same faculty that allows an experienced nurse to catch sepsis in an infant before the monitors do will allow a frightened stranger to misread a harmless teenager as a threat. The same gut that knows instantly that an old friend is lying will confidently insist at a roulette table that red is due. The faculty does not know the difference between a domain it has trained in and one it has not. The faculty feels equally sure in both cases. That is the trap. The person who says always trust your gut is given advice that is half right and half dangerous. The advice is right insofar as the gut is often tracking something your narrator has missed, and dismissing it outright amputates an entire mode of knowing. The advice is dangerous insofar as the gut is also a reliable amplifier of whatever prejudices, fears, and old narratives you have absorbed across your life. And trusting it uncritically is a way of ratifying your own blind spots and calling the ratification wisdom. Every bigotry that has ever existed has felt, to the person holding it, like intuition. Every confident misdiagnosis has felt like clinical instinct. Every old pattern that a person is about to repeat again because they cannot help themselves feels like certainty. The feeling of certainty is not evidence of accuracy. It is only evidence that a pattern match has occurred. The match could be matching anything. And this is where the therapy of intuition begins, because a great deal of suffering comes from not knowing, in any given moment, whether the gut is telling the truth or telling an old story. The person who was raised in a house where love was unsafe will often feel, as an adult, that every new love is unsafe. The feeling will be unmistakable. The body will tighten, the chest will close, the legs will want to leave. The feeling is real, but what it is tracking is not the person in front of them. It is a pattern laid down long ago in circumstances that no longer apply and which the nervous system has not yet updated. Calling this intuition and obeying it without question is how people end up alone in the middle of their lives, surrounded by the evidence of every time they followed the flinch and called it wisdom. The person who was hurt by a betrayal years ago will often feel, in every new relationship, the first warning signs of betrayal. They will feel it so clearly it is almost audible. They will pull back. They will protect themselves. They will mistake their own old wound for present information. They are not lying to themselves. They are simply misreading the instrument. The person who has been told over and over that they are not good enough will feel, in the moment of being offered something they want, that they are not good enough for it. The feeling will arrive as certainty. It will not feel like self-doubt, it will feel like fact. They will turn away from things they want, citing a hunch. The hunch is not lying. It is reporting faithfully from the library it has been given.
And roll along. If the night feels right and words come free, say anything, love, say it to me. I won't chain you to some old prophecy. Just roll along. Out where the sky goes on for miles, you'll find the things that make you smile. I drop my fear somewhere back a while, so roll along.
But the library is not a library of the world. It is a library of what they were told about themselves. So the question with every strong feeling is never only what am I feeling? It is also where is this feeling coming from? What pattern is it matching? Have I earned the right to this certainty? Or am I confusing a present signal with an old recording? These questions do not discredit the feeling. They honor it enough to ask what it is actually saying. Most feelings contain information, but not all of the information is about the present. The mature relationship with intuition is therefore neither worship nor suspicion. It is closer to the relationship a skilled craftsman has with a tool they know well. The tool is trusted for the jobs it was made for and suspected for the jobs it was not. You notice what the tool is telling you and then ask every time whether this is a situation where that tool is reliable, whether the domain is familiar, whether the pattern being matched is the pattern the world actually contains or a pattern you were taught to see. If the answer is yes, you follow it. If the answer is no, you note the signal and set it aside. The tool does not mind, it is only a tool. The craft is in the craftsman. And here is the gentle part, which is easy to miss. This practice does not require you to distrust yourself, it only requires you to know yourself. To know where your gut has been earned and where it has not. To notice, over time, which of your hunches have proven true and which have proven to be your old wounds talking. This is the work of a life. It is not finished quickly, but it is finishable. And what it produces, slowly, is a person who can tell, most of the time, which signal is which. Who can feel something strongly and still ask, what is this, really? Who is no longer at war with their own feelings because they have made a kind of peace with how those feelings work. That peace is not cynicism about your gut. It is a deeper trust of it, a trust that includes the awareness of when not to follow it and does not collapse at the first sign that it was wrong. The trust you are building is not a blind trust. It is the trust you have in an old friend whose strengths and weaknesses you know. You know what they are good at. You know what they are bad at. You listen carefully when they speak, and you weigh what they say against what you know about them. You love them anyway. That is how the relationship with your own intuition is meant to feel, not adoration, not dismissal, knowing. Learning to listen. Given all of this, what is the practice? Because if intuition is a faculty that can be cultivated and not merely a faculty that one has or lacks, then there ought to be something one can do. There is. Two things in tension with each other. Both are necessary. The first is to work hard enough and long enough in the areas of your life that matter to you that the deeper mind has something to work with. This sounds obvious when said plainly, but it is easy to forget. The deeper mind cannot produce insights about a domain it has not been fed. The gut cannot know things it has never encountered. You cannot have reliable intuitions about people if you have spent no time with people, or about art if you have spent no time with art, or about any craft if you have not put in the quiet, ordinary hours. There is a fantasy sometimes that intuition is a shortcut, that one can skip the practice and simply feel one's way to mastery. This is not how it works. The feeling is the fruit of the practice. Without the practice, there is no feeling, or worse, there are feelings with no basis, which is the most dangerous state of all. So the first half of the practice is the long, slow accumulation of real experience in the things you care about, not theorizing about them, not talking about them. Doing them, engaging with them, failing at them, noticing when you were right and when you were wrong, and letting the noticing sink in. This is the material the deeper mind will later work with. Without this material, the mind has nothing to make anything out of. The cultivation of intuition is, in this sense, indistinguishable from the cultivation of a life actually lived rather than one merely thought about. The second half of the practice, which is where most people stumble, is to become quiet often enough and trusting enough that the deeper mind can report back. This is harder than it sounds because modern life is engineered to prevent it. Every empty moment is filled. Every silence is interrupted. The phone is there. The feed is there. The ambient noise is there. The kind of unstructured, unentertained, slightly bored time in which the mind's deeper work actually surfaces is, for most people, almost extinct. And so the insights that would otherwise arrive do not arrive, not because the depth has nothing to say, but because the surface never goes quiet enough for the depth to be heard. This is why almost every breakthrough in the history of human thought seems to have happened during a walk, or in a bath, or while falling asleep, or in the shower, or on a long train ride. It is not coincidence, it is mechanism. The conscious mind has to step aside for the deeper mind to speak. The stepping aside does not have to be long. It does not have to be spiritual. It can be as small as a 20-minute walk with no phone, but it has to happen, and it has to happen often, or the deeper mind will simply go on holding its conclusions in silence, waiting for a moment that never comes. The old stories about the scientist who dreamed the answer, Kekulé and the benzene ring, Mendeleev and the periodic table, Lowy and the chemical signal across a nerve, are not stories about revelation from beyond. They are stories about what happens when a person has worked intensely on a problem for years and then finally let it go long enough for the deeper mind to finish. The dream did not come from outside. It came from inside, from the layer where the real work had been happening all along. The conscious mind had been too busy and too loud to hear it. When the conscious mind slept, the signal finally came through. This is not a special mechanism reserved for geniuses. It is the ordinary mechanism by which any deep insight arrives, in any life, for anyone who has done the work of loading the depth and then had the patience to let it speak. So the practice in full is this: load the depth with real material, then go quiet, then load it again, then go quiet again. Over and over, across years. Neither half works without the other. Effort without rest produces exhaustion without insight. Rest without effort produces peace without substance. The insightful life, the intuitive life, the life in which the deeper mind genuinely contributes, is the life that alternates between the two, trusting that both are part of the work. And there is one more piece which is almost embarrassing to say because it is so simple. You have to believe that what comes up from the depth is worth hearing. You have to not override it the instant it arrives. You have to let it live long enough to be examined. Many people have strong intuitions that they crush, almost reflexively, the second they form, because some voice inside them, often a voice borrowed from someone who did not love them well, tells them they are being silly or dramatic or irrational. The intuition was there, it was speaking. The override arrived a second later and shut it down. Over time, this trains the depth to stop speaking, not because the depth has given up, because the depth has learned that speaking is useless. Part of the therapy of intuition is learning to let the depth speak without immediate punishment, to let the flinch happen and to notice it, and to ask it what it knows instead of explaining it away. To treat your own feelings as worth listening to, not because they are always right, but because they are always information, and information deserves at minimum the courtesy of being heard before being judged. That courtesy, extended to oneself, repeated over time, is most of what the cultivation of intuition looks like in a life. It is not dramatic, it is not mystical. It is the slow, patient, quiet work of learning to be on one's own side. 8. A counsel, not a voice. There is a final realization that this whole way of looking at intuition tends to lead toward, and it is worth naming because it is gentler than most people expect. It is that you are, inside yourself, not a single voice, but a counsel. The narrator is one voice. It is articulate, it is clever, it is the one you are most used to, it is the one you mean, usually, when you say I. But it is not the only voice, and it is not always the wisest. Below it, around it, underneath it, there are other voices. The body is a voice. The older layers of memory are a voice. The feelings that arrive with no clear cause are a voice. The small, insistent pull toward certain people, certain places, certain work, that is a voice. The flinch away from others, that is a voice. The dreams are a voice. The images that surface unbidden during long walks are a voice. All of these are you, none of them are all of you. To live well with your own mind is partly to stop letting any single voice drown out the others, not to let the narrator rule the counsel as it often wants to. Not to let the body's fears rule the counsel either, as they sometimes do, especially in people who have been hurt. Not to let the old voices of caretakers who are no longer in the room rule the counsel, as they also sometimes do, speaking in accents that sound like yours until you listen closely enough to realize they are not. The work is to hear all of these voices, to know them well enough to recognize them, and, slowly, to let the whole counsel deliberate. What is called intuition is often just what it sounds like when the counsel has reached a conclusion the narrator has not yet written up, when the body and the memory and the older layers have already, quietly, agreed. The narrator's job, at that point, is not to overrule them, but to translate, to put into words what the rest of you already knows. The best narrators, the wise people you have known in your life, the ones whose judgment you trust, are people who have made this peace. They do not distrust their feelings. They do not worship them either. They listen, they translate, they act. That is what intuition in the end is asking for, not faith, not blind obedience, not even trust exactly, just attention. The willingness to stop for a moment when something in you pauses on a sidewalk for reasons you cannot name, to let the pause be real. To take it seriously enough to ask what it might be saying. And then to go on one way or the other with the quiet knowledge that you were at least listening. That part of you was allowed to speak, that you were not, in that moment, alone inside your own head. This is the small and beautiful thing the word has always been pointing at, not a superpower, not a voice from beyond. Just the whole of you, finally at the table, still learning to talk to itself, still sometimes wrong, still underneath it all, remarkably, patiently, ancestrally wise. It has been with you the whole time. You only have to listen.
Rain on my window, tapping like you're ready. tree.